we work with technology partners that are utilizing, ATM rails, are utilizing wallet technologies, are utilizing different ways that the funds are flowing from the consumer and ultimately to the dispensary that aren't going, straight through the payment brand rails, and they are flowing in a compliant manner in order to make the payment happen.
In this episode of the Dispensary Marketing Podcast, I'm pleased to bring you Aubrey Amatelli. She was previously the Executive Director, Commercial Banker for JP Morgan, and now she's currently the CEO for PayRio, the first payments provider specializing in the cannabis and alternative wellness space. In this episode, we talk about what it's like building a business in a high-risk industry, how she's able to make payments easier for both dispensaries and brands, and then finally, she shares some crucial lessons in resiliency and how to continue moving forward despite setbacks within your business. You're not going to want to miss it. I'll see you over there. Aubrey, welcome to the Dispensary Marketing Podcast. Thanks for hopping on the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So, you've gone from working at JP Morgan to now launching your own company. What's the moment that made you realize you wanted to be your own boss and start PayRio?
That is such a great question. And the moment goes way back to when, growing up at the Silicon Valley, really. I was born and raised in San Jose and saw, the Silicon Valley grow from when I grew up and there were cows on the mountains near where I lived to just this hustle and bustle of Google growing and Facebook growing and just being part of really where tech, felt like it started, right? And so I always dreamt of, I started my career at a startup in Silicon Valley. It was acquired by JP Morgan. It was wonderful being acquired by the big bank. I learned so much at JP Morgan, and that's where I found my love for payments. After a decade, I was really itching to get back into the startup world. I knew I had this great knowledge of payments, and I was ready to help startups and learn more about it, right? And the opportunity arose where, cannabis, I saw a need in cannabis and alternative medicines, and my kids had been grown, and I was ready to take the risk. So I would say it's kind of been in my blood since I was born, but it was the perfect timing back in 2022. So have you always
had like entrepreneurial tendencies even when you were younger? And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You could be picking flowers out of the garden and selling them and stuff like that. Selling lemonade, on the side of the road, doing garage sailing. Did you dip your toes into anything like that, or was it straight startup, JP Morgan, start my own business?
I would say I've always had competitive tendencies since I was really young. I started playing soccer when I was 5 years old and always had it in my head. It was a time when the women's national soccer team was really big. They won World Cup. Brandy Chastain threw off her shirt, and Julie Foudy was my idol, Mia Hamm. I have 3 generations of soccer Olympians in my family, believe it or not, so I always wanted to be the 4th. And so I had this competitive nature from when I was a kid to get as far as I could in the soccer world. And I learned that hard work, and determination really got you to where you wanted to be. So I think the hard work in that sense really, translates to being an entrepreneur. And I started working when I was 16 years old. So my parents at a young age said, you're 16, you can get a job. We're no longer handing you that $20 bill to go to the movies with your friends. You're old enough to go work, and then you can go to the movies with your friends. So I've had the hard work ethic, and I've really had to work for everything since I was 16. So I think both of those combined are qualities in an entrepreneur. So I don't necessarily think I wasn't on the corner selling lemonade like my kids do today, but I had those qualities just ingrained in me from when I was
I think it's really important, because I have a lot of conversations now with kind of people who are thinking about starting their business, right? It's like, hey, Brandon, because I was the guy, not to say I'm some seasoned professional or anything like that. I was just the friend that they knew that started his own business, right? So I've kind of a couple friends that come up to me. It's like, hey, I've been doing the corporate life, I'm doing all this stuff, and I want to start my own business, right? And what should I do? And ultimately, regardless of whatever idea they have, I always break it down into what are the main character traits that you need to be successful in the thing that you're doing. Because I think, especially at the tail end of maybe when you decide that you don't want to do the thing, you maybe get comfortable, right? Probably similar to your story, you're like, I'm pretty comfortable with JP Morgan. I want to, kind of go and start my own thing. And I always walk back to like the key character traits and the behaviors and the habits that you need to be successful at whatever idea you end up starting, right? Because it's not like I know every industry and the ins and outs and all that stuff, but it really takes it back to like the level of work ethic that you do maybe in a job that you don't necessarily care about, which is why you want to start something else, has to be completely different than the level of work ethic that you need to be successful at a thing when you're the only one doing it, right? So I think like you don't need to be, again, the person selling lemonade on the side of the road, but you do need to be the type of person to be able to accomplish, the things that you're looking for.
Exactly. I agree. It's the drive. And I've seen throughout my career, that there are, those individuals who have that drive ingrained in them. I've hired hundreds of people throughout my career, and everyone's amazing in their own way, and everyone has their own skill set and what they want to do. Some want to come to work and do their job and leave, and others want to become that CEO one day. And you can really see it in them in that interview. And I was always the one that just had that drive to become better and get to that next step and that next step and that next step. What could I accomplish next? And even as a salesperson, how can I be at the President's Club? How could I be number one? I wanted to be, at the top. And that was just I love that sense of accomplishment. And I can see why I'm here today. I love to lead and achieve, and also, now ultimately bring my knowledge to the cannabis industry and alternative medicines, and help this space grow.
Find, I don't know if the word's trouble, but for a lot of high achievers, there's a level of expectation that you obviously have for yourself, right? You just said it yourself, I want to be number one. And I think one of the biggest problems is like moving the goalpost. It's like, I'm going to work so hard to accomplish this thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, okay, done. Let's move on to the next thing, right? Have you had like problems trying to balance a level of self-expectation to managing the gap of the thing that you want? Because I find that if you're always in a position where you want to achieve more, you're also in a position of lack because you don't have that thing, which is why you want that thing, right? And I think for some people, after a long enough time, it does maybe get overwhelming. Did you have any issues with the thought of continuing to want more, or were you always just, okay, boom, push through that wall, that's done, boom, push through another wall, that's done? Or did you kind of need to take breaks in between, each of these things?
When you want to get to that next step, a lot of being, a high achiever is for me, it was, you're kind of afraid of failure, right? Because if you fail, sometimes you get knocked off that rung and you get pushed back down. And what I've learned as, a founder and CEO, especially, is that failure and those mistakes are the biggest keys to getting to that next step. The success that PayRio's seen and the biggest learnings in my career to date have been those mistakes and those failures and those learnings that we've made. And so I'm not, so pushing the envelope and pushing to achieve more doesn't necessarily have to mean keep climbing. It just means pushing yourself to, into areas or industries that are unknown, and knowing that potentially there will be failure, or you will trip and you will fall, because you want to find those gaps and you want to, stumble and fall, because that's where you are going to learn, so you can mold that next step. I don't necessarily think where it's just you got to keep going up and up and up, but maybe it's expanding now. It's growing bigger, or just expanding to new industries. So we've kind of, we're constantly growing and listening to the market. And for me, that's an achievement, is how many more, people or markets that can we help. So the achievement isn't necessarily like getting to the top and being this unicorn $1 billion company. That's not necessarily what, I'm looking for now. It's like, how can we help more industries actually find those areas where we are going to trip and fall so that we can
Very
grow
well
even
said.
more.
Running a dispensary is harder than ever. There are competitors popping up all over the place. So to help you with this, I've talked to 100 dispensary owners from coast to coast, and I developed this 6-stage marketing plan to help you increase your online orders, increase revenue, and also help you have a lineup of people outside your door. So if this is something you want, please check out the links now. So getting tactical kind of on these obstacles and the journey of up and up that sometimes goes back down, but ideally goes back up. What's been, the hardest challenge that you faced so far, and how did you overcome it? Or at least the most memorable one?
There's been a few. I know we were discussing this, prior. There's, very early on in PayRio's history, I'm coming from a JP Morgan, which is a low risk, the largest payment processor in the world at the time when I was working there. And, we did low risk payments. Over here at PayRio, everything we do are in ultra high risk industries, right? Like alternative medicine industries. And so redundancy in terms of payment options wasn't something I thought about, because JP Morgan never failed. We were, JP Morgan was up, the uptime was 99.99999% going on and on and on forever. And so, at PayRio, we found an incredible technology to launch with, had an incredible track record, fully compliant, did all the research. It took months and months before we launched it. And in my mind, there was no way this technology could go down. It checked all the boxes, right? But it's cannabis. And so we, it was paused for a little bit, different things happened. And at the end of the day, I learned a big lesson that redundancy is key. We can't just have all of our eggs in one basket. We need to, diversify. And so there was a chance that, that technology was ultimately sunsetted. If I hadn't had that redundancy, we could have lost our entire customer base. There was a 45-day window that if I didn't make a decision for redundancy, there may not be PayRio, right? And so that was a huge learning lesson that we skirted by, luckily. And then there was another one where last year there was an opportunity to bring an incredible technology to market with a very credible source, with everything, all of the checks and balances I needed, documentation, etc. My gut was telling me this is too good to be true. My intuition was saying this is too good to be true, but all the checks and balances are there. It was an easy road, right? And so I was like, you know what? My intuition's saying something's going on, but everything is in the proof. My lawyer's looking at it. Everything looks good. Let's just do it. It turns out my intuition was right, and so those are the moments as an entrepreneur where sometimes the easy road isn't always the best road, and your intuition is right. And that's always hard. Do we go this way where there's, dollar signs and a really amazing opportunity for our clients? Or do I listen to my intuition and lose out on an opportunity that could be amazing? But at the end of the day, it was, as I mentioned earlier, an incredible lesson that taught me so much. I learned the resilience my company had. I learned how important how strong the relationships were between PayRio and our customers, and we made it through. It was the biggest learning of my entire career. If I trusted my intuition, I never would have had that lesson. So, those are two examples.
Because I think any good entrepreneur needs to have a tinge of optimism too, right? Like obviously from an entrepreneurship standpoint, you're always looking to solve problems, right? And I find even myself, like, what problem can I solve? What problem can I solve all the time, right? But then you're just pre-positioning and pre-framing your mind into like, oh, I see a problem there. I see a problem there. I need to fix that. I need to fix this, right? And it's really tricky. But the thing that I really liked about what you just said is that despite the massive learning, right, we'll put it to you that way, that you went through, you did label it as a lesson, right? Instead of, holy crap, like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, right? And I think that's really, really important. So how long did it take you to quote unquote recover from that situation from when it happened?
We're still somewhat recovering. I would say we just fully,
Wow.
Over 6 months. I invested almost a year. I invested a lot of money and time into that. And as an entrepreneur, I'm PayRio's, I'm the sole, founder, self-funded, and, have 20 plus employees to take care of along with my family. And so when you're in that position, and this was a huge financial loss for the company, obviously, still working through that, but that could take years. The only one to lean on to keep the company afloat is also, myself personally, right? And so there's a lot you have to do as a founder that goes behind the scenes to keep the company afloat, to work your way back up. And as a team, I had to talk to my children about it. I had to talk to my employees about it, and we all came together to get through that hump. Because when you're expecting a certain amount of revenue to come in to keep the company going, and it's essentially someone runs away with it, you have to figure out a way to keep it going. And that I learned that huge lesson. I learned the responsibility of a founder, and how I never wanted anyone to miss a paycheck, and it was on me to make sure that happened. So we've recovered, and now we're stronger than ever. Our numbers are amazing this year. We're growing rapidly, and it's all thanks to the hard work of the team, and we made it.
Takeaway lesson to trust your intuition, or are you now retroactively able to determine another factor that you might have overlooked in the due diligence process at the beginning?
It's a combination of both. It's trusting my intuition, and then asking even harder questions. Poking even further, taking more time to make the decision. And I think it was, the intuition was there. Everything was on the paper. I'm just going to trust the paper, instead of saying everything's on the paper, but my intuition still doesn't feel right. Let me ask a little more. Let me maybe fly out and meet in person first. Instead of, Zoom is amazing. We do all of our business in Zoom, but when you get out there in person, for a big deal and break bread and like, that's enough. That's when I think it's really before you do a huge business deal, instead of like after you launch retroactively. So many things to learn, but that's a great question. I would say it's a combination of both. If your intuition, I'm going to trust my intuition more. I think if I would have pushed the due diligence even further, I might have even started, but maybe started a lot smaller, so the recovery would have been a little less time. But I'm so happy for the lesson, and I know we'll recover, and we have recovered, and we'll continue to push to be whole again in the future.
Now, going into kind of seeking out opportunities, right? So JP Morgan, just payment processing, just for everybody pretty much, right, at this point in time. Mm-hmm. What made you want to go into cannabis, CBD, alternative wellness?
Initially, I born and raised in California, cannabis has kind of always been around. I have been part, in and around the industry actually since 2012. So my kiddo's dad and partner at the time in 2012 was a home grower in Santa Cruz County. So coming from like the world of JP Morgan, I was also part of the other side of our world was seeing what can, the underground kind of cannabis world, and how, the industry changed and, started to get medical and legal, and just how a lot of the home growers have lost their businesses in a way. And I saw that industry change, and soon, he was kind of out of a job in that sense. So I've always been intrigued by the industry, and when having the opportunity to go out on my own, I've been very passionate about alternative medicine. So it actually started out in focusing on the world of CBD. So we went out, started to call CBD shops, but they all needed a solution for cannabis. And of course, I love a challenge. I'm competitive. And I also was, cannabis has been a huge part of my life too. So I was like, well, I didn't realize at the time, I was kind of naive. I didn't know that there was a payment issue in cannabis. I didn't realize there was a payment issue. So I accepted that challenge fully and then pivoted to finding that solution for cannabis. And that's how PayRio started, was offering credit card processing for cannabis for dispensaries. And since, we've grown, now we support CBD, e-com. We also support all other alternative medicines in the e-commerce standpoint, peptides, and we've grown rapidly. But it was CBD was the initial product, but very quickly we saw the need in cannabis and found a solution. And that was really what got, our name out there.
I've done maybe like 80 plus of these podcast episodes by now. And one of the recurring things between dispensary owners and software and CEOs and you name it is compliance and regulation in this space. Do you find the difficulties with payment processing in this industry more on the technical side, or do you find more of the difficulty on the compliance and regulation side?
On the payment side, it is all on the compliance and the regulation. So because cannabis is federally illegal, right? The payment brands, Visa and Mastercard, those are our governing bodies. So as a payment company, our governing body are Visa and Mastercard. And Visa and Mastercard always are going to side with the federal government. Even though cannabis is legal on a state-by-state basis, Visa and Mastercard say until the federal government says that cannabis is federally legal, we aren't going to process payments in cannabis in the traditional fashion. We can't just set up Square for a dispensary. We all know this, right? That would be one day we will. When cannabis is federally legal, that's going to happen. Okay. And then PayRio needs to figure it out. No, I'm just kidding. I have ideas. But until then, companies like PayRio are needed. Because we work with technology partners that are utilizing, ATM rails, are utilizing wallet technologies, are utilizing different ways that the funds are flowing from the consumer and ultimately to the dispensary that aren't going, straight through the payment brand rails, and they are flowing in a compliant manner in order to make the payment happen. That's kind of where the knowledge from JP Morgan, that is where, I can look at these technologies and I evaluate many, all the time and make sure that they aren't breaking the rules. They aren't blatantly going on Visa and Mastercard rails and putting the dispensary in harm's way. I see them all the time, and we are very transparent with the dispensary. If we see that they're using a solution that is breaking the rule or the rules, we say, you could use this solution or you could process payments in this way, but we are not going to support that because we want to make sure you are safe. So if you want to work with us, we will put you, we'll connect you on a technology that will keep you out of harm's way. And that's the way we operate. I never want to put a dispensary or an e-commerce company in harm's way. But it does mean that maybe the payment solution is a little more clunky, right? It might be a little bit more expensive, but it will keep our customers
safe. So functionally, let's say I'm a dispensary owner. Hey, Aubrey, I got my payment processor account shut down. Like, oh my goodness, like I hate this industry. Please help me out. I need your help so much. What do you then tell me to kind of help alleviate this problem?
Yeah, well, we love having these types of conversations. Not that they were shut down, but just because we have become experts and we have a handful of options, and we always love to jump on a Zoom. I take the JP Morgan into cannabis in terms of we'd like to have these consultative conversations. What market are you in? What type of consumers do you have? What is your average ticket? All of these pieces of the puzzle matter in terms of what payment solution we think is best for your dispensary. It's not one size fits all for these dispensaries. And then from there, we'll go and talk about the different solutions we have. We have debit-only solutions. We have debit and credit solutions. We have solutions with Cash App and Apple Pay and Google Pay. We even have, ACH and a solution. So we have all these different solutions, but it just depends, on the customer type. For delivery, there's a different solution than for brick and mortar. So we love to have the conversation with the dispensary, and then sometimes their needs are a lot different than, New York's needs are a lot different than California's needs. But we have something for everybody.
So recently, Cannabis Business Times named PayRio the first payment company to work with in the cannabis space, right? And a lot of, I guess one of the themes of this conversation is entrepreneurship and stuff like that. And in that world, there's a lot of mentors. There's a lot of people you can look at or companies you can create frameworks off of. So you've clearly taken a framework from JP Morgan and applied it to your own thing, if you will. But it's not like there's a blueprint for your own exact business, right? So how are you kind of like navigating the fog of business, if you will, if there haven't been really anybody doing it with how you're doing it right now?
I really wanted to have a niche, right? I think I'm passionate about alternative medicines. I think they are going to make a change in this world. I want to help dispensaries and websites provide easier access for consumers to this medicine, and that is, in my opinion, through payments, through giving them alternative payment methods besides cash. So we've really focused and stayed very true to our mission of staying within that space, and I think that's helped us really grow within the community and get to know intimately these payment solutions. If we were every single one of our competitors might dabble in cannabis and dabble in CBD, for example, but they also dabble in all of high risk. So that's all of these other industries that have nothing to do with alternative medicines. And so our entire team is also passionate about this industry. So I did take the blueprint from JP Morgan and the way we operated, but I also wanted to make sure that we were very, focused in on one industry in this industry, so that we became experts in this industry. And it was kind of this one-stop shop where we really knew, and we had those bank partnerships and those technology partners that love this industry as well. And then another big piece of what I wanted to create was a space for, from the very beginning, for women. We're very female founded. I wanted to be this very approachable brand, because I think payments can be very boring and scary and and unapproachable. And I wanted to make sure that companies in the cannabis and alternative space, like, payments are brand new. It's been a cash only business for so long, ATM and cash, they're infants when it comes to payments, and so it's a little bit scary to try to figure out what we should do. We wanted to become very approachable and be that approachable brand. I mean, the Instagram page we have for PayRio, I run it. Our LinkedIn, we're always communicating, and so I don't know. I just kind of wanted the company to be me, and an extension of me is my team. My team is comprised of people within just my network that I trust and love and have been referred to us. So I have two of my best friends from high school who work at PayRio. My neighbor growing up is the second employee at the company. One of my best friends from college who I met playing freshman year soccer at Seton Hall, she's our VP of sales. And every single one at the company has been, we've met through our network or been referred. So it's a really close-knit group, and very open to a lot of stay-at-home moms, a lot of giving the opportunity to people who want to make a difference in their families' lives, but not have to work necessarily full-time and can have other jobs. So I don't know. I made my own blueprint, but it seems to be working out so far.
How do you manage the friendship, work relationship between kind of friends and people you've grown up with? Obviously there's business needs and then there's friends needs. And I would assume at some point in time, those two may conflict, not for any reason, but it's just the way life is. Do you have any problems managing those relationships of the people that you're closer with within the company?
Being, self-funded company, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but I'm a single mom of 3, and so I put my life savings into launching this company, and I really needed to trust. This is my 4th child. I have 3, so this is my 4th baby. That there's ROI around every corner. I couldn't afford to be giving a salary if I didn't trust that person was really going to give their put everything into their job to make this company a better company. And so I needed to make sure that I really knew and trusted the people that are the foundational part of this company to bring it forward. And so that's really why I feel most felt comfortable initially with the close network or the referrals, making sure there's references that we knew. Not everyone there are people that I've met on LinkedIn, but they have great references, right? So that's why I've kept, the community is first, second, third, within my network. But I haven't hired all my friends, right? And so that's the thing. I love my friend network is great, but not all my friends have been hired, and that's for a reason. So it's the individuals that are at PayRio want to be there. They work hard, and that has no effect on our relationship. It's actually just brought us all closer because we all have the same passion for what we're doing. So, it's if not every friend has gotten a job offer, let me tell you that.
That makes sense. I'm personally curious. So, a couple of my previous episodes have been kind of touching on the importance of team, right? So in this space, compliance and regulation, massive headache. But the team is what kind of smooths out the edges, right? It makes things, a lot better. How do you, obviously somebody with a lot of references is in general a good candidate on paper. How do you effectively, and maybe you don't, but how do you better understand if they would be a good fit within the company? Because, for example, if they do have a lot of references, presumably they would also have a job as well too. Do you have a filter for figuring out, A player tendencies versus B player tendencies? What is your overall framework of determining how to find the best team to fit around both you and then for the company itself?
Great question. The way that I vet that out initially is everyone starts out as a 1099 employee. So I have this, safety net as well that they have to earn their position as a W-2. And I feel the safety that I am not, locked into that relationship if it's not a good fit. And so that and the way I approach it is let's make sure that this is a good fit for both of us, right? And that's the best way for me to approach it as a startup. And not every hire that I've made has been, a home run. And I have made a few hires that are W-2 right away that haven't been. And those have been people I've worked with and have been references. And, again, as we talked through earlier, not mistakes, big, learnings, right? And great people, just not good fits for the company. And so I handle every employee with care and every exit with care. And I value the relationship, and I value the time spent at PayRio. And if it's not a good fit, I value the exit, and I want to make sure that every exit is a positive one and that they understand why. So it's not been 100% for sure, but it's always a very soft landing outside of the company as well. But I think the key for me has always been to start as a 1099 to see if it's a good fit. And I've learned that actually, so I don't ever start, with a W-2 at the beginning, because I want to make sure,
And then is that generally
together.
a 3-month kind of period? Is it longer? Yeah.
3 months. Yeah. 3 months. And I learned that actually from my first startup that JP Morgan acquired, where I was a 1099 sales rep, I think for 90 days. And then you earn that position to be a W-2 sales rep. And that was a really awesome way to go about it. Because you have to, you kind of earn your stripes, right?
So looking ahead, where do you see some of the biggest opportunities for PayRio, but then also, the world of cannabis payments as well?
So I was just at Hall of Flowers in Santa Rosa, and it was a much more intimate Hall of Flowers than the past 2 years. And so, talking to the different brands that had booths, one of the biggest needs was, getting paid, right? The brands really are needing to get paid from the dispensaries, right? They have these amazing products that the dispensaries have on their shelves. Consumers are buying them, but there's an issue with money flow within cannabis right now. From a payment processing standpoint, the consumers, pay the dispensary, and we pay the dispensary within 2 business days. So our B2C payment option is working very smoothly. Like, the dispensary gets paid, but what happens after the dispensary gets paid, is broken. It's very broken from the farmer all the way to the dispensary through the distributor. That piece of the puzzle is broken, and what I was hearing a lot of at Hall of Flowers. Earlier, at the beginning of this year, we launched a B2B payment solution that brands can work with dispensaries to set up payment plans that integrates directly into QuickBooks. It can help dispensaries pay over time. It can help the brands, send one invoice and then set up a reoccurring payment plan with the dispensary, and have the brand's account receivable team have one phone call instead of chasing them down every month. So it's a product that I just, nonchalantly just wanted to discuss with all the booths. Would this be useful for you? Would you be interested? And every single one of them said yes, like, give us a call. We would love to have that. A really soft approach between brands and dispensaries to work together to figure out a way to get paid without, the dispensary feeling bad that they owe $10,000. Maybe the dispensary can pay $2,500 over 2 months, right? That feels a lot better. So I'm really excited about that payment solution after Hall of Flowers, and we already have a couple brands signing up already. So that's really exciting. When I talked about earlier, for PayRio, once cannabis is federally legal, Visa and Mastercard are going to say, okay, we can do payments. And then the point of sales of the world, the Dutchies, the Trees, the Meadows, right, they are just going to turn on a payment solution. And so our terminals are non-integrated to the point of sale today, and that's by design. So point of sales do what they do great. We do what we do great. The future of PayRio is working with, finding a partnership or working with those point of sales, maybe acquiring a point of sale, figuring out what the next step is to integrate our payment solution so that when that time comes, we can continue to work with our customer base. So I'm thinking Fantastic. A lot about that now.
And lastly, Aubrey, please plug all of your stuff and your information if you want people to get in touch with you.
PayRio.co or .com. You can just click meet the team, and I'm right there. My calendar's right there. So I'm always open for a meeting. I love to Zoom. I think it's fun to meet clients and meet partners, and I just love to jump on the phone. So you can always connect with me there. PayRio_HQ is our Instagram. We're super active. I'm the one behind that, so we can chat there. And then LinkedIn, my LinkedIn, Aubrey Amatelli, and then the PayRio LinkedIn, we're active there as well. So you can catch us anywhere. We make sure to respond right away, and unlike many other payment companies, you can get a hold of us right away.
There's no robot in the background saying, hello, please insert your name and number.
No, you get someone live on the phone every time.
Well, Aubrey, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to hop on the Dispensary Marketing Podcast. And for everyone else who's listening, I'm your host, Brandon Quan, founder of Cannabis Marketing. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye. Hey, according to YouTube, this is the best next video for you. Go ahead and click it now.